Welcome everybody. This is Microsoft 365 Platform Community Call. It is 20th of December. My name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a Principal Product Manager, I guess is my title. I don't really care what's my title in the Microsoft 365 platform side. And this is the 20th of December, so we're expecting a bit less attendance today. But as we have shared in the past, we will not actually have explicit Microsoft-owned demos within upcoming this week or 3 weeks. So this week, the following week, 27th, and also on the 3rd of January. And the reason for that one is quite simply a lot of the people from Microsoft are right now out. So we would have had problems of getting demos scheduled. But at the same time, we didn't want to actually cancel this calls because we might actually have good discussions and feedback and whatever comes to mind as part of the discussion part. We can see Fabian, we can see Brian, so a lot of Microsoft people are actually on the call, and David as well. So it's like, we're out, no, we're not. But, for the community, it's still here. But I did want to actually do a quick recap, of course, always on the assets. I'll do this a bit differently probably this time. We'll recap the slides. We'll talk about a bit on the direction. So first of all, we do have the 2 different YouTube channels available. We are looking into combining them. So we do have a shared plan with our marketing, where we are looking into combining the both Microsoft 365 developer and the Microsoft 365 community video channels to one. And that's the reason why you haven't actually probably seen that many videos in the Microsoft 365 developer channel for a long time. So that channel is, well, it's not going to be killed, it's not going to be removed, all of the videos will still remain, but we will continue using the Microsoft 365 community channel as the primary location for publishing anything around Microsoft 365 platform, including also Power Platform stuff wherever suitable, so community demos, recordings, all of that stuff in there as well. Probably the channel name will be a bit changed, but we'll see how that goes. Hello, Luisa, I can see you on the call as well. Now, we have a lot of open source assets available, but as you know, it might be really hard to actually find the relevant asset for you. We actually have the sample galleries, which are a great way for finding the relevant sample for you. And maybe I should actually, I'll do a quick ad hoc demos as we go through on them, because as I said, we will not have explicit demos today. We'll turn into a discussion and feedback point a bit later today. And then one address which you do want to remember is aka.ms M365 community, which is the one centralized location on the community areas. Now, related actually on that one, let me go there as we are off the typical agenda. We can clearly see here some things are changing as well. So what we're looking into doing is a bit of a repositioning our community efforts to avoid anybody feeling bad and everybody being feeling welcome. So we're looking into basically calling out in the future this as a Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community location. So again, if you build something for Power Platform, you quite typically are familiar with Microsoft 365. We use it in Microsoft 365, and of course, Power Platform is one great capability of extending Microsoft 365. So kind of overlapping these things, and that's also because me, Fabian, Brian on this call from Microsoft side are of course working closely with David and Hugo and Heather and all of that. So we are internally more and more aligned on these things. So I wanted to call that one out. It's a bit of a insights for you what's coming in the future as well. So related actually on that one, I will actually spill the beans. So David, you actually had a really nice news related on that one, and I will spill the beans on that one as well before we go to your slide, unless you were planning to do that. But hey, my screen. I'm owning the presentation. So we're looking into on the batches. We're looking into adjusting the batch as well, because in the past we were M365 community, but now we want to make sure that nobody feels that they would not be welcome, and we are one centralized community across all of the things. So it's Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community. We don't want to have silos, but it's important that everybody feels that they can find the right location in the community as well. So that's something what is coming as part of the updates for 2023. So you don't need to feel like, am I part of those or those people? No, everybody are the same people, which is always good. Those people. Anyway. So As noted already, we do have also community calls. So this one is the Tuesday call where we have Microsoft presenters. Typically, today we'll have of course, the special day where we don't have actual demos, and that's why I'm doing this ad hoc demos, and a bit of a off from the script from presentation perspective. On top of this, we have the Microsoft 365 Identity Platform call, Office Add-ins monthly call, and Power Platform monthly call. Power Platform monthly call happens tomorrow. This is hard. English is really hard. Tomorrow on Wednesday, on 21st of December. And then we have the Tuesday series, which happens on 7 a.m. Pacific time on every single Thursday. And it's either the Microsoft 365 Power Platform community or Vivo Connection SharePoint framework. Now, for all of these, we are actually looking into always looking into presenters. So please reach out if you have cool stuff what you built for Microsoft 365 or Power Platform. You can reach out to me directly, David directly, Fabian directly, and so on if needed. Or now that I'm noticing this, we don't have the URL here to sign up for the demos, but we are all the time looking into having presenters in this calls. Good. Now, as you're getting started, hopefully on using Microsoft 365 and building stuff for Microsoft 365, you want to take advantage of these two things. So first of all, we have the Microsoft 365 developer program. You can get a free E5 developer tenant, which will renew automatically within 90 days if you're using that for developer usage. That detection and the logistics behind of that is to be honest, a secret, and we cannot share you how we are detecting the developer usage because those tenants might be used in a wrong way as well. So we've been having some challenges related on those tenants in the past, as within people been using them for non-development purposes, and that's why currently you can there's a bit more adjusted model and process for getting that tenant for your usage. If you are a developer, if you have a phone number, you can get a tenant for your usage. That's the key point within the program. If you use that tenant for something else than development, that's not a thing what we would like you to do. On the Learn side, there's a lot of stuff available on the Microsoft 365 developer side of the things. And let's actually, just for the sake of it, let's make sure that we actually go there. So if I go aka.ms, M365 Dev and Learn, we can actually see that we have, it helps if you can write.
Extra I in there, yep.
It's not MS 365. There we go. Writing is also hard. So right now we have here 12 different learning paths, and those are basically the individual things what you might be interested in learning. Identity, Microsoft Graph, Microsoft Teams, SharePoint Framework, Vivo Connection, and all of that. And then for individual learning paths, there are a separate set of modules which you can take advantage as well. So this is a great way of if you have some free time during the holiday season, a great way of learning new things around the Microsoft 365. So that's a really, really cool thing as well. All of this is free. And the cool thing is that if you are signed in, you can actually get the learnings registered, and therefore when you come again, it will remember what are the learnings and modules what you've gone through in the past, and you can find additional things. And of course, for the Power Platform people, there are Power Platform learning modules as well. Now that I'm realizing that, we should probably update the slides a bit, David, on having that there as well. On the slides, we also have the general topics. We have the Microsoft 365 Developer Podcast, hosted by Jeremy Thake and Paul Schaffelin. Aisha Bass has been hosting a few of the calls there as well. And then we have the PMP Weekly, which happens, well, surprise, surprise, in a weekly basis. Both of these are now on a small holiday break and coming back in early January because we're trying to avoid to push too much content during the holiday season. And there's no point of doing that because a lot of people are hopefully resting and have more time with their family. On the sample gallery, we have now 1,350 samples in place. Let's have a quick look on that as well. So if I will go aka.ms M365 /samples, we can easily find huge amount of samples available for you to take advantage. And this is really, really cool because you can search the samples based on your business requirements or based on the need what you're building. So if I would be something like a bot, if you're looking for doing bots, there's a separate set of bot samples available. If you want to do bot for What would it be? If what would it be? We could have a discussion, or we could do, there's a discussion board, a sample available, meeting app, and all of these samples are easily available for you to take advantage. Now, how this works is that we're actually aggregating the information directly from GitHub based on the samples what the community has provided. So it could be you providing those, or samples which Microsoft has built and provided as well. So they're all aggregated to this one centralized location. And you can easily filter down the locations and filter down the samples based on the type and solution and what they're actually built on. So for example, in Power Apps, there are a lot of cool stuff available. For example, Lusa's Microsoft Craft Toolkit People Picker, which is not technically Microsoft Craft, but it's a Microsoft Craft imitating picker in the Power App, which is really, really cool implementation. Now, what's cool in here is also that you actually get your personal profile page within Sample Gallery, which is that you can actually share your unique URL to pinpoint and share what are the samples what you built and what you contributed. All of this information can be, are behind of a unique URL. So every single contributor has an automatically generated unique URL, which you can actually share forward. So now if we would, as an example, if we go to the front and let's check what Techuan has done for the Microsoft list, and that is a lot of samples. But you can basically then do, well, you have your tracking rights, so to say, to share this page forward and then promote all of the samples what you've done. All of this also works in a way that the profile information is coming automatically from GitHub. So if you update the profile information in a GitHub, it also gets updated in this sample page, which is really, really cool. And then when you find the cool looking sample, let's do something else. Let's do Marcus has contributed so many cool samples from Microsoft Teams. So then when you actually find a cool looking sample, let's say bot meeting lifecycle basics, you can then or you will be redirected to the GitHub, so you can open the solution in a GitHub and then you can pull it down that from here. So rather than going through endless amount of repositories, organizations, locations, and samples, you can actually find the relevant samples directly from a one centralized location. Good. Cool. Now, what else did we have on our slides? Now, we do have our Sharing is Caring initiative as well, which we talk about always within this course. Anything interesting? Let's go and have a look on the aka.ms Sharing is Caring, and I'll let David actually talk about what are we seeing here. What's the real? How did we came up having Sharing is Caring initiative?
Wow. Well, we only have an hour, Vesa, I think, so not sure how we're going to cover this. It was started out, actually, I remember it started in Vegas. I was actually right with some of the folks from our team in Vegas this last couple weeks in M365 conference, and we were talking about some things that took place there. You were actually on stage talking about contributing to the community, and something had triggered, something had been mentioned about GitHub and don't be afraid of it. And I was sitting in the audience, actually sitting next to you when you were sitting down. And I thought, people are afraid of it because it's kind of a landscape that's confusing and stuff like the things like GitHub, right? And that's kind of where it started. And so I remember leaning over to you saying, I got an idea. If I were to offer up like hands-on guidance for someone on how to do a pull request, would you help me amplify that? And you said, sure. And I crafted up a little tweet and we sent it out. And by and large, after that, I got a bunch of requests. I was getting up at 2, 3 in the morning and meeting with folks from all over the world because we are a global community. Meeting one-on-one, finding documents that could be updated because docs.microsoft.com is driven by GitHub, and you can help curate that information. So showing people how to do that. Once it was realized that, hey, there's a need, there's a desire for people to learn and friends of ours in the community to learn how to do all of this, we started setting up it as a formal initiative. And now it is what you see. We've covered a lot of ground. Louisa is part of that team, Emily Mancini and April Dunham, Hugo Bernier, and Derek Cash-Peterson. And we're getting more and more prolific on what we're covering in terms of the spectrum. But the key is that we're providing hands-on guidance for everybody. And that means that we're going to work together. It's not just a video or a document that helps you, but when you get stuck, you're like, well, where do I turn from here? It's sessions that are live, hands-on, and they're safe space, so they're not recorded, and they're going to provide opportunities for you to collaborate with other like-minded individuals within the community, whether they're in Microsoft, MVPs, just members of the community that are wanting to do more. We're all in this together, and so it provides opportunities for us to learn together, all free of charge.
All free of charge, and helping everybody to succeed, basically teaching. Don't give a man a fish, teach the man to fish. No,
fish.
What is
it? Give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, feed him for life, or something like that, right?
Exactly, something like that. Yes, indeed. So really, really cool. Thank you for the interest on that. I didn't even remember where it actually originally got started, but thank you for reminding me. Now my recollection is getting back. So
yep,
I do remember that. Really, really cool. Now, for the news side on this week, there's actually still something happening. So on the developer news, there was 3 new articles from last week. So there's still 5 app source validation errors for Office add-in submissions. So if you're submitting to store in app source or for Office Store, that's actually a good list of things to check. And we should probably do the same for Microsoft Teams and also for SharePoint Framework solutions as well. And then there's a great blog post from Daniel Carrasco around 10 features to jumpstart your Microsoft Teams app development. So basically talking about the different options and scenarios, what you can actually do with that. And then there's a really great tutorial from Gary Trinter related on build bots to automate repetitive workflows using Microsoft Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio Code. Really, really cool stuff as well. A long one, but it really has a nice clarification on how to do things. On the other blogs, the only one which has been active is the Microsoft Teams one, and there's a really nice blog post around the Figma application, which is now available in Microsoft Teams, and how you can actually use that during the meeting and do continue the real-time collaboration within the Figma files directly within the meeting. So that's a really nice blog post from Niranian. Then Microsoft Teams Premium Preview is now available for a preview. Teams Premium Preview for preview. Teams Premium is now available for preview. Okay, that makes more sense. English is hard. Premium for free. Anyway, and then there's a nice chat between a few MVPs on the few features which are available in Microsoft Teams as well. Now, as we chatted already when we started the call, during this call, the 27th and 3rd of January, we will have the calls, and we will have me and a few other people at least in the call from Microsoft side, and we're looking into having this kind of a discussion, random feedback sessions, but we will not have actual agenda within these calls. And that's because the Microsoft employees, so most of the Microsoft employees are actually on a holiday break, except the ones who are actually in this call. So, right, we're the ones who keep the company running, I guess. Just kidding. So
some of us are still on break, right? But we just love the community so much.
That's true. That's true. We don't want to miss this one. But what I was planning to do now is just that was a longer intro and more relaxed intro and random discussions. If there's any questions, if there's any discussion points, if there's any feedback, we would love to cover those. I'm not going to move forward from the slide, and this is intended to be there to give you some insights on what we're doing. There was at least some discussion related on the developer trials and developer functionalities. On the syntax is not available, unfortunately, currently in the Microsoft 365 developer program. There's ongoing discussions and plans potentially to make that happen in future, including some of the Viva modules. It's logistically quite difficult to do, unfortunately, so that's the reason why it has not yet been done. So you can only use the existing trials, and then that's it pretty much. But yes, Jim, no to get them out picture, because we're looking into having a bit less people and attendance within this call and the next call and the 3rd of January. But anybody, any feedback, any questions? You're welcome, Adam, on the chat. Well, David, so I'm going to put you on a spot. You've been now working for Microsoft for how many months?
I think it's been about 8 or 9 months now. Yeah.
8 or 9 months. Any big kind of what was the most shocking thing to come into Microsoft and from an MVP side?
This is a family show, right?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I just think the amount of people working within Microsoft is great. The amount of initiatives we have is fantastic, but we are still limited in capacity, right? So I think that coming from the outside and even being an MVP for years, I've kind of know, and yeah. So let me just give some context. Good call out, Don. So my role is community program manager within Power Platform. I work with Hugo Bernier, who's on vacation right now, well deserved. And we work very closely with Vesa on the ODSP side. So we're aligning a lot of our community efforts to make sure that it's the best possible community for all of you. And so I think that what I learned coming in is that there's a lot of moving pieces, right? It takes a lot of time. We're an organization that's huge, and sometimes you're on the outside going, "My goodness, this is Microsoft. What in the world is taking them so long?" Well, an organization of this size is kind of like turning the Titanic, right? It takes a little bit to kind of shift that boat and turn, but at the same time, it's also understanding that while we are a huge organization, there are still scalability limits and stuff like that because we only have so many people. So it's been good to be able to see kind of the inside in terms of, okay, there is still a lot of good like-minded folks. We're getting more and more folks in the community or from the community to come into Microsoft. So I think that's created a culture of inclusivity and diversity, empathy and understanding, and knowing what the community needs. So that's been a really good opportunity to work with others who get it and understand, but also others who want to learn. Like there's a lot of those who didn't come from the community and want to learn more about the community, and that's been really great as well.
That's a good reminder. Not everybody in Microsoft comes from the community and have that hands-on experience, because a lot of people might have joined Microsoft 5 years ago directly from university. So they've never actually had that opportunity of engaging with the community and building this understanding of what we can do together.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Now, as I see Brian actually on the video, so I will put you on a spot as well. What are you actually, Brian, doing? What is your role and what do you do now that we talked about David as well? And feel free to ask any questions on the chat as well, or having discussion on other things. So
yeah, I did see a question from, I think it was Mohammed. We can get to that here in a second. But to your question, so I work with Microsoft Graph team, specifically on the customer and partner experience, CPX team. So I kind of think of us as like the tip of the spear when it comes time for customers or partners looking to do integrations with Graph. We cover as a kind of a team, almost say like a 100, 200 level across all of Graph, but then we all kind of individually focus in on specific areas. So I look after areas like Microsoft Search, or some of our compliance APIs, Graph connectors, and a couple other kind of small areas like that. So one of the big programs that I run right now is the Microsoft Graph TAP, our technology adoption program. So a way for a lot of folks who are external to bring in things like feature requests or talk one-on-one with our different product group folks who are actually building APIs and so forth. So we want to make sure that our external community is informing our internal folks on, here's the things that we need, here's the things that we'd like to get built, any kind of blockers, and help people get the best solutions they can out of things.
Yep, really cool. Now, Mohammed had a question. So was that already covered? No, not yet.
I pasted a link to an article for that, but his question was around, the chat's flipping around all of a sudden because people are posting now. Where did it go? Here, SPO auth question. Any good resources for accessing SPO from a .NET console app using Azure AD app only with certificate and thumbprint? The console app runs in a local machine by a developer who doesn't have access to AAD or certificate and Key Vault.
And then that is basically, well, the article which you had is pretty old, so this haven't been actually updated, and this is not using the Azure AD authentication option. It is using ACS. So this is completely supported still. And yes, this can be done, and this is super kind of a classic way of doing authentication, and then using PowerShell or code in a C# to connect to the SharePoint Online. Simple example. Thank you, by the way, for finding this. I didn't even remember that we had this.
Yeah, I've got some samples that I've written for Microsoft Graph that uses either like interactive auth or certificate based. So if you're looking for samples on just .NET Core itself, well, not just .NET, to do that authentication, like how do I get my certificate and how do I use that in the auth libraries, I do have a sample for that, but it's not the SharePoint APIs, it's Microsoft Graph, so I'm not sure if that would be helpful or not, but I can dig up a link for that too.
Yep. And related on that one, of course, a lot of the SharePoint APIs are available from Graph, so we do recommend on using that. Graph is the most modern and the best way of accessing information across the Microsoft 365. And from an authentication perspective, I will address Paul's comment on the chat as well. We do recommend using the Microsoft Azure Active Directory as the model for authenticating and coming in. Now, ACS itself, as in Azure Access Control, if we are super precise in this, Azure Access Control has been already dead since 2018, but not the ACS which SharePoint Online is using. So it's a bit complicated. In Azure, there is no support for ACS anymore, but originally, actually, ACS was introduced for SharePoint first. And then as within the SharePoint Online, there's a lot of features and functionalities which still depend on this ACS. It is still supported. Sooner or later, however, I'm not going to give you any dates, but I'm hinting to a direction. We will deprecate ACS officially, and then after a while, we will shut down ACS, and that will then impact all of those authentication models and just the way of authenticating against SharePoint Online. And why we want to do this is that we want to move to use the Azure AD directory, which should be the one which is used by default for authentication. Now, fear not. Whenever that statement about the deprecation comes, that means that we are openly saying that we are taking this away and we are no longer investing on it. We are still supporting it. And whenever that announcement will happen, we will give you at least 12 hours. Wow, 12 months heads up, with 12 months heads up on before it's actually going to be shut down. So, and then tooling on identifying all of the applications which you have in the SharePoint Online and all of that. So that kind of tooling and APIs are being actually worked on right now. So still supported, and the ACS is still supported, and all of your existing registrations still will work. And we will announce that deprecation at some point. It might happen next calendar year, it might happen later than that, but that's in the future pipeline. If you are building an updated authentication model or updated applications, always use Azure AD. That's the future. 12 hours, that was good. That was, please quote me on that one in Twitter. No, just kidding, don't. We'll give you 12
hours. That's like the doomsday clock just started ticking, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, exactly. Gotta go do something.
Yes. That was good. Good. And those who are joining a bit late, and just recapping again, for the 20th and 27th and 3rd of January, we do not have explicit session and agenda or demos within this course because we're on official, holiday season. But that means that we're doing kind of this ad hoc answering questions and comments in the chat as they come along. And of course, on Bo's comment, we will not intentionally want to break any of our customers or any of the partners. So whenever we're removing something from the Microsoft 365 or from the Microsoft services, we want to be thoughtful. We want to give you heads up early on. We want to communicate those clearly, that movement, the direction, and all of that. We openly want to share already that this is going to go away sooner or later because it's outdated technology. But when, we'll see. We'll communicate that clearly. Related on that one, actually, I would also avoid, if I would be building things right now, for example, stuff like SharePoint add-ins, and that should be pretty visible, that we haven't really invested on SharePoint add-ins. Again, fully supported. We have not announced deprecation. When we announce the deprecation, we will give you enough time to react on that deprecation announcement. But if you are building anything, please consider not to use SharePoint add-ins in SharePoint Online, not the technology where we are significantly investing. That's actually great. Paul has a great tip on the chat around having a Power Automate and flow, which basically notifies whenever there's something related on deprecation in the tech community side. That's actually really cool. Great idea. Is there any documentation for the Graph.net v5 preview besides the upgrade guide? Graph people, Fabian, Brian, where can people ask questions around the SDK or provide feedback on the SDK?
There's a GitHub repo for that, and yes, there's an upgrade doc. Look for announcements coming to that very, very shortly, I would say, in the beginning of next year. I don't have an exact date, but it should be sometime in January for more of that stuff to get published.
And of course, in the Microsoft GitHub, Microsoft Graph is the organization. And from here, you can actually find the source code for a lot of the SDKs and all of that stuff. And as you find things, that would be the right location to then report those issues as well. So.
Do you have specific questions on that? I'm just kind of curious. If you do, there is, we're actively looking at like the issues on that repo, but also if there's things that are, hey, this is not working the way I expected, or any other type of definitely can post them onto the repo too.
Yep. Now, there's a lot of questions related on the deprecation. I want to actually address what about classic SharePoint deprecation? We have not deprecated classic SharePoint. Of course, we would love everybody to use only modern SharePoint, but we do acknowledge that a lot of customers and partners are still have old sites which are using classic. We will keep on supporting. Let me see how am I saying this in the right way. Of course, sooner or later, or probably later, there's going to be some sort of a directional update related on creation of the classic. And you can see this already in SharePoint Online. It's getting more and more difficult to create classic sites. So it's pretty clear that we try the people to use the modern SharePoint, which was introduced in 2016, announced, and 2017 rolling out. So it's been around for a while. The classic SharePoint is super, super classic. So we would love everybody to use the modern. If we would somewhere in the future stop supporting classic, we would first deprecate it. Deprecation means that we're openly saying that this is a feature where we're not investing anymore, and we don't recommend you to use that. And if we would do that, most likely as part of the deprecation announcement, which means still fully supported, not recommended, we would probably give us some sort of a heads up on the date or the announcement timeline whenever we would potentially drop the support of the classic features. Now, I'm not saying that we will ever do that. At the same time, will we have SharePoint Classic running in Microsoft Cloud within 2055? Probably not. That's in 32 years. So somewhere between 32 years and now, there has to be something happening. So it's inevitable. When? We'll see. Now, I didn't actually give away anything, so trying to be skillful on the between. But yeah, so in general, the future, of course, if you want to be future proven, try to use the modern capabilities, modern features, options, and all of that. And if we announce some features to get dropped, we will give you a proper heads up on doing that. We've seen that in other features in the Microsoft 365 as well. And also, Bert is actually calling this one out. The Microsoft 365 assessment tool is an absolutely brilliant feature for understanding what's being actually used within your tenant. So if you go to the Google, because that's the search engine which I use, at least, great search engine, you can actually find the Microsoft 365 assessment tool. And this is a tool on application which you can run against your tenant, and then that will actually do assessment around the SharePoint Microsoft syntax. It can do assessment on the 2013 workflow usage. It can do other assessments as well. And we're looking into additional modules to be here as well. Actually, Bert, because you're on the call, you're saying that including ACS and add-in usage and all of that, but it's not actually mentioned here yet. It's something which is coming, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So on my task list for the coming weeks is to build a module that supports all kind of classic SharePoint detection. So you would have like a classic assessment, and that would list all classic elements in the farm in your tenant, whether that be in workflow, Azure ACS, add-ins, classic lists, anything that's classic. We try to kind of give you like a complete list of overview of those things, and also with the actionable guidance on how to move from that classic SharePoint usage to modern SharePoint usage.
Yeah,
that's the plan.
Yes. And of course, as part of that, just to recap, this does exist to help on understanding you to have an understanding on the status of your tenant. So have we announced the workflow 2013 deprecation? No, we have not. Now, will we announce at some point? Yeah, that's inevitable. Every single product has a life cycle. At some point, there's going to be announcements related on all of that. And then it's great to have a tool which can actually tell you where within your tenant those features are being used so that you can actually understand, is it impacting you or not? That's what this is all about. Good. Scanning through the chat. Good comment from Jimmy related on 32 years. So good. Cool. Thank you, Boo, on sharing the feedback as well. And let me put that one back in the slide or screen sharing so people know what's happening within the call if you're joining a bit late. So we're basically doing random Q&A feedback discussions, whatever comes to your mind based on the chat, based on discussion and promos. And we are recording this, so now I need to really start paying attention on what I'm saying. Anyway. What about things not yet? Yeah, thank you, Jim. You asked that before, but I didn't react on that. So on the BCS, so BCS is something which we haven't, business connectivity services, isn't it? Something like that. It was released back in SharePoint 2010 and then gradually moving to the cloud and all that. It's not something where we've been heavily investing in the future, heavily investing in currently. So I would not really bet on my, let's say, business on BCS in future. But again, we have not announced any deprecation timelines for BCS either, or I don't think Content Organizer as well. Anything you can always have a look on the docs. You can have a look on the Microsoft messaging and how many new announcements there are for that particular feature and capability, and that will give you some insights on where we're heading with that functionality. Does the FilePicker 8.0 support multi-tenant configuration? The examples only show a single tenant example. FilePicker 8.0.
I can help with that, I think.
Cool.
That's the new FilePicker control. Well, actually, shared control, the one that we as Microsoft use in Teams, for example. If you go to the Files tab, the set control, and you can use it as well in your applications. And it should support multi-tenant, in my view, because you as a developer own the authentication. So the control will ask you like, hey, I need an access token, and you will then deliver the access token. So if you can get an access token in your configuration, then you should be good.
Cool. I'm just trying to find. There we go. File pickers. There it is.
That's the old one. That's the 7.2. That's the old one.
So if we go in here. Interesting. Maybe Google the documentation is not up to date.
Google is not up to date.
I'll add stuff to my to-do list. Okay, cool. Now, I use certainly Google. I'm located in Europe, and the Bing benefits do not work in most of the Europe. So I guess that's a lot of people like Bing benefits, but I've never seen them because we're located. They're location based. So whatever works for you. There we go. Thank you, Bert, on the samples. I think I have to say that's one of the things, benefits of, well, one of the things which has changed, at least during my career at Microsoft, which is now 16 and plus year. We were super jealous about any non-Microsoft applications or usage. Nowadays, we're not. It's actually highly beneficial for people to use iPhones and iOS and Google and everything else because we get a lot of ideas from there. And of course, we want our customers to be able to select the one application or solution what works best for them. So we were a bit more completely different. Like in 2008, you were unallowed to use iPhones. That was a crime against Microsoft. So not anymore, certainly not.
One quick comment, Vesa. Someone was
Absolutely.
mentioning that we're losing some of the questions in the chat thread because it's going so quickly. I'm curious if we could actually explore using the Teams Q&A feature when we have these kind of Q&A heavy sessions in the future.
That only works in the live. That does not work in the normal meetings.
We do have a Power Pages AMA tool that we could start using actually that allows people to upvote the questions and everything. It's pretty slick.
That could be in. So
we'll have to set it up for next week maybe.
There's a version of Q&A that works in normal Teams meetings. It's not part of the live event stuff. Because we actually use it for some of our internal meetings where we've got, 15, 20 questions going on. But it lets you have threaded kind of conversations or replies to questions.
Yep.
So you can actually see like, oh, hey, this one's been replied to, this one hasn't. Might be something we could explore for one of our next calls.
Yep, absolutely. We still have two more of these special calls coming. Yeah. So absolutely. And David, let's talk about our sync on what you have as well, because now we're starting to lose questions for sure. Really good.
Yep.
But this is actually positive. We have much more questions than I was expecting. So this is really, really good. Can we get SharePoint for SPO customization more love in 2023 demos? Can we give SPFX? Not sure what Mohammed wants to have, but yes, we'll certainly have SharePoint Framework demos in the upcoming year as well. Absolutely. And yes, I would love to use Windows Phone, but they don't. I think I have something somewhere in my closet, but I just loved it. The UX was so good.
I've got one in a cabinet somewhere behind me. I don't want to go digging through it right now.
And I have this Zune, the best Zune, which had the full screen touch and everything else, and that's absolutely awesome. That's like so mind-blowingly cool operating system in that. So, what else? Is SharePoint team small in Microsoft? It's not. So, So Kim's question is the SharePoint team small in Microsoft. I feel that whenever we open Microsoft tickets, it goes to an external SharePoint team and non-direct Microsoft contract. This is actually unfortunate way how many companies do their business. So they basically, this is not a Microsoft specific thing. Support quite often has been bought as a service from outside hosted company, and they will act as the first line of a defense for the incoming questions and support. And that's why it's typically not a Microsoft employee who has the first line of a response on the support request. Then eventually, if it's a real big issue, or if it's a issue where we need to have engineering contacts, the first line of a defense support or the circle has then connections and ways of going directly to the Microsoft. And that's the only way we can actually scale the engineering, because engineering teams have to be able to focus on delivering new features and capabilities as well. So it's a balancing act on focus on existing features, capabilities, and supporting them, and then focus on building new features as well. So SharePoint team is, I guess, we shouldn't say any numbers, but we're talking about thousands of people anyway, worldwide. Microsoft altogether is, I don't even know how big we are nowadays. I guess we're in 200,000 with vendors. 180? Okay. Yeah.
180,000, I think, just full-time employees or something like around there.
Yeah. Which is mind-blowing. But coming back on David's intro related on how he feels and what is the number one thing on Microsoft when he joined is, a lot of the Microsoft functionalities works in a bit of a silos. We're a bit more adjusted and aligned with for example, with Microsoft Graph and Brian and Fabian and organizations and engineering and Power Platform. Of course, sales organizations are isolated, and actual product development happens almost like in a startup style. So even though it's 180,000 employees, the individual applications and features are like startups, and then you build those with a smaller team, and then you report forward on what's actually happening. It's a interesting engine, which makes things. A lot of other Zune lovers in the call as well. That's good. Yeah, yes, I'm a Windows Phone developer. 221,000 employees. That's a lot. Yes.
There's a huge jump it shows between last year and this year, like 40,000. So I'm not sure how reliable that is.
I think because during the pandemic, employment spiked because you could employ from anywhere. So at least for certain jobs. So there's a huge spike.
Yep, that is true. That's true. And that's a great thing that we're allowing people to join the companies and work from anywhere. So a lot of awesome opportunities. There's still a lot of MVPs, Paul. It's I can't remember the numbers, but there's a lot of MVPs for sure. we're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of MVPs, or thousands all up. So.
Yeah, I'm doing my job to try and get more MVPs every day.
Yes, indeed.
Especially if you're building on a Microsoft Graph.
Now, as you are now there, and I don't see a huge amount of pending questions which we haven't reacted on, or yep. Thank you, by the way, John, on the graph selected permission suggestion. Noted. We'll get that one queued up at some point. Fabian, can you talk about who are you and what do you do for a living?
Well, Brian mentioned his before, so I would just copy Brian. But if for those who joined late, I'm a part of the Microsoft Graph Customer and Partner Experiences team, just like Brian. My focus areas are usually running incubations around adaptive cards and Teams and ACS. But I would say starting 6 months ago, I also became the product lead for Microsoft Graph MVPs, and that's been really, really fruitful. Being part of the MVP community before joining Microsoft, this was one of the things that, if I ever had the chance to do it, I would have wanted to do it, because as Vesa was mentioning before, taking a lot of the stuff that you learn from the community outside and bringing it inside with a new voice, new ideas, new perspectives, it's well received, and then being a feedback loop now back on the inside, bringing that back on the outside is totally something that I've always wanted to do. So, and one of my big initiatives right now, as I was saying when I was actually in Denmark a couple of weeks ago, speaking to MVPs and community folks, is that realizing that the Microsoft Graph is largely indexed towards developers. Is something that I've always seen, always heard, but recognizing that there's a ton of people, Louis Freeze being one of them, and and others that do either Power Platform, Power Apps stuff, or IT pros building PowerShell stuff. I want to make sure that we get a diversity of opinions and having a more inclusivity and bringing a ton of people in from those disciplines into Microsoft Graph MVP ecosystem. So it's just been something I've been preaching and trying to adopt more of. So, yeah.
Yep. And why are Power Platform people using the Graph again? Why would you use Microsoft Graph? Putting you on a spot.
You putting me on the spot? Oh,
yes.
I thought you're putting people who use Power Platform. Anything M365. Anything M365 is available through the Graph, and exactly. either through connectors or just using writing your own OData and accessing the endpoints to your HTTP. That's an open canvas to you to basically access anything from the Graph and build richer systems and richer applications. Leveraging the things that people already see in Microsoft products. So basically, you're building your apps in the same vein of how Microsoft builds their apps. So the barrier to entry is lower, and there's a familiarity, and it becomes more of a sticky application.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And I want to call out David has the Better Together story there. That's a great way of thinking how we are, of course, partnering inside of Microsoft as well. So there's so many things, and of course, it's not a competition. It's better together with all of the different services, and then having the Microsoft Graph as the one centralized API endpoint, which everybody is using, is awesome. So now, thank you, Kim, for the feedback on that one. Related actually on other things and development stories. So and as we have this random Q&A discussion, it is a holiday week, so this is good. This is more relaxed than typical. But Bert, can you talk about, Bert, what is your experience? You've been in Microsoft for a while. What are you doing? You've been doing quite a few of the community demos as well. Is it possible if you can unmute and be able to talk about these things?
Yeah. So the question is what I do at Microsoft.
Yes.
Various things. I'm like in between typical roles at Microsoft. You have product managers, you have engineers that operate the service, you have developers. I'm kind of doing all three of that a little bit. Although I'm in a PM organization, in the same group as Vesa. But work-wise, a big chunk of my time goes to working with ISVs and customers, helping them get the best integration with SharePoint and OneDrive. So if an ISV is developing on top of a platform and they have questions, or there's a new ISV that has big plans, and we kind of there to help them look at the right APIs to call and ensure that things work. There's one big part, and the other part is more focused on community and PNP, operating the .NET libraries, doing telemetry stuff, backend stuff, and for PNP operational things. You would be surprised how many operational things that you need to take care of just to keep things running inside Microsoft due to policies and requirements, and which is all good, but it takes some time. But I'll do that as well. I think that it's a bit of a summary of the things that I currently do.
Cool.
It's a bit of everything.
How long you've been working in Microsoft? Just out of curiosity. I guess I remember this.
Yeah. I have the orange crystal, so in my 16th year. Currently. So we actually started almost together. I think like a little funny thing. My first training at Microsoft was a SharePoint training in Munich, and that was given by Vesa. So that's like 2007, 2008 somewhere.
2007, probably.
January 2007. So we just joined Microsoft, and then. What will you do? Oh, there's this product SharePoint. We don't have any people in Belgium that can do that, and sure, why not? Let's go for training, and that's how I rolled into SharePoint when I joined Microsoft.
And there you are. Now you're a software engineer in SharePoint organization. So.
Yep, indeed.
Just some of us cannot move forward, right? So I started with SharePoint, and I'm still here. So
Yeah, is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. As long as you like doing it, then it's all good.
That's true. As long as you like the daily thing, absolutely. Now there was a SharePoint-related question, and let's not talk just about SharePoint, of course, in this course. Certainly not. But there was a question around SharePoint on-premises and on the script editor web part on the subscription edition. If you're using the classic experiences, the script editor web part does exist in the subscription edition in the on-premises. If you're using the modern experiences, then it's not. It is not available. In general, it's not a recommended functionality to use because it actually opens up a security risks, because any content editor can accidentally copy-paste code in the script editor web part. And that's why it's no longer by default available in the SharePoint Online. Now, related on subscription edition evolves on top of the SharePoint 2019. So SharePoint 2019 was originally a fork from SharePoint Online, and that meant that some of the features which we had in the SharePoint Online back in 2018 ended up in SharePoint 2019. SharePoint Online is now having new version and features available in Microsoft 365 every single week, well, except for the holiday weeks. So it's the latest and greatest and the most awesome capabilities. The subscription edition is an evolution on top of the SharePoint 2019 with new capabilities and new features and options. So just to clarify a bit of that historical dependencies. Good. Yeah, Orange Crystal was a good question. Any good questions and answers from Brian related on the graph? Of course, we want to have Microsoft Teams questions, graph questions, discussions, if you have anything where we can help. What would be the one thing, anybody who wants to actually talk about this, if you would want to have any Christmas gift from Microsoft helping you to succeed in Microsoft 365, what would it be? What is your biggest wish for 2023? Well, probably this is a good question, which we'll follow up on the next week as well and the week after. Enable document sets in a new site created. Create site asset library.
Well, the site asset library is created automatically at first use. Or as enable site asset library method as well that you can call via REST and CSON APIs.
Yep. Good input on the chat. Of course, the graph API parity with SP SharePoint REST and CSON. It is evolving all the time, but let's face it, the graph will never have 100% feature match on as in the SharePoint REST, because some of the SharePoint REST APIs are for UX and they're not intended to be third party to use. So that's why there's going to be a bit of a parity, but we'll all the time building more and more graph APIs for the OneDrive and SharePoint. Pages API to be finished. Yeah, absolutely. Love that. Microsoft Graph Pages API is going to go preview. Potentially we'll announce that to be in preview available in the beta this week, or it might get delayed until early January. And that's because there has been unfortunate sick situation with some of the people who are involved in rolling that one out. But the flu season is on top of us, so that can happen. We might have an announcement tomorrow, or then it has to be delayed until early January. And then managing search config programmatically, that's good stuff. Style library, a lot of good feedback. A lot of awesome feedback in the chat related on, and some good jokes as well. So this is, and of course, it's any feedback is always good feedback. Oop, let me go one more slide. Well, we are actually running out of time pretty soon as well. Now, super cool to see all of the feedback. We are collecting those from the chat as well. As said on the previous slide, within this week, 27th and 3rd of January, we'll have this kind of a more formal community call style without any actual agenda. We'll get back on the planned agenda with actual live demos by Microsoft employees from 10th of January. Good discussion on the chat continues. But please keep the feedback coming. We are building the Microsoft 365 for you. So we need to know what works, what doesn't work. And so that's super critical for us. We will publish this recording in the YouTube channel. So if you're interested in coming back on some of the discussions which we had earlier within this call, you can catch those as well. And the next call like this is in December 27th. Sorry. On the Thursday series, I will quickly recap that as well. The Thursday series is the Microsoft 365 Power Platform community or Viva Connection and SharePoint Framework community. Those calls are continuing normally. So we do have community demos this week and next week and the week after already scheduled. So there are 2 to 3 demos in that Thursday call. That's a 7 a.m. Thursday, either one of those series. But other than that, I guess we are good to go. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We actually had a bit more active discussion than I was thinking. This one was fun. Just to recap on our historical things and introduce people from Microsoft side as well. And we'll continue this discussion within upcoming weeks as well. But I guess that's it for now. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining. Good to have you in here.
Thanks all.